What did a school teacher say that stuck with you? Have I been respectful to you? Me? Well, yeah. Are you being respectful to me? Simple words. They have guided me so much. I had a teacher say the same thing to me. Now I ref college and high school basketball and use this line whenever coaches start cursing me out on the sidelines. Does a good job of reminding them that kids are playing. It's okay. You can smile. This was first thing our middle school music teacher, who we all loved, said on his first day back after his wife, an art teacher many of us had in elementary, was killed in a car accident. He made music class a lot of fun, and we'd missed him in the week he took off after his wife's death. He was used to coming into a room full of smiling faces, ready for another fun hour of class. We were all sitting utterly silent, fixed on him with what I'm sure were the most somber little faces he'd ever seen. He smiled at us after he said it, and we all smiled back, and he thanked us for it. God, that hurt. Ended every class with "You're good people." My algebra teacher ends every class with "Have a good day, be nice to people." Such a small thing, but it's sweet. Biology teacher, pointing at student, ugly bag of protein, full of water. I feel like this is a Star Trek TNG reference. My teacher told me that I had a beautiful soul and mind, which I took as meaning that I was fugly and was being pitied, but later on realized that it was her way of showing me special attention because I was an introverted loner. One day in 7th grade our principal came into the homeroom class and wrote on the board $19.32 in big numbers. He got our attention and announced to the class, "This," pointing at the number, "is what you are worth. Every day you come to class, the school gets $19.32 from the state for each of you. So if you are sick, you should still come to class, go to the nurse, and get sent home. That way the school will still get its $19.32. That was the day I stopped caring about school. I'm pretty sure he was trying to increase attendance and believed what he said was positive. But when a person you're supposed to respect tells you you're worth less than a $20 bill. I thought this was gonna be motivational at first, but holy frick. I know what it is to be young, but you don't know what it is to be old. I don't know why and how it came up, but our English teacher asked me if I understand that. It was the first year and I was 10, and I definitely did not understand. But it somehow stuck in my mind as the sound of the sentence, until I could decipher the memory in retrospect. As my dad said, I have been 17, you haven't been 50 inches. I once asked my teacher something about the subject, and she said, "I don't know, but I'll do some research and get back to you tomorrow." I'm studying to be a teacher, and one of my teachers told us there is no shame in admitting to your students that you don't know something. However, you should look it up to answer it next time you see them and be prepared for the next time you get asked that. First day of science class. Many of the topics I will be teaching you this year will likely be proven false throughout your life. I love teachers that are honest with students. Simply saying something like "you'll never need to know this but it's part of the exam so we have to" is so much more likely to get me to learn something than just saying it's important. Sounds like an ace teacher. You're a spoon in a knife block when asked why most of my friends were high achievers and I was only average. Once you're an adult, you choose your own fate. Your mom won't control you anymore. This came from a 9th grade Algebra 1 teacher who took the time to tutor me. My mom was as anti-vaxxing, cult-following nutbag who didn't think school was important because Armageddon is coming. I was terrible at math until I met him. It's been 25 years and I think of this teacher still. I am grateful. Don't talk to mom anymore. She got tired of me asking where Armageddon was. Send him a letter if you can. Teachers like marking your homework as much as you like doing homework. Why I don't assign it anymore. More than half the kids don't do it, the rest copy it, and about 3 smart kids do it themselves and they don't really need to. I'm FB friends with several of my old teachers. I once wrote about how I had the recurring nightmare of being in my chemistry teacher's class and having to take an exam but not having studied for it. He replied saying that his recurring nightmare is my being in his class. He should have just sent you a study guide for one of his exams. Maximum sass. You have unlimited potential when you know how to find the first step. After many years of pressing through, I feel like this has essentially become my motto. I had only a concept before, but now I have the words. Thank you, stranger. Just get a freaking haircut. I kept complaining during pay that my hair was in my face. This was one of those teachers that felt more like one of the boys than the teacher. Blew my mind hearing him swear. We had a teacher like that who thought he was one of the boys. He ended up getting an ex-student pregnant once she left. He was in his late 50s while she was 19. My geometry teacher was super chill. He taught us to play poker and blackjack. On the last day of school he said, "Remember, if you ever need anything or have any questions while you're at this school, there are about 50 other teachers you should go to before you come to me." My geometry teacher was too busy getting poked by my history teacher to care about us. I went from honors to support. He said with rage, "You used to be one of the good ones." A teacher said this to me, but instead he said with a tinge of sadness. I took Latin all 4 years of high school. I quickly realized I despised the language, but I stuck with it for the teacher himself. He alone was worth it. Our Latin class was right above the hallway with classrooms for special needs kids. One day, after it was apparent nobody did their homework, my teacher stopped class and said, "You're all taking what you have for granted, and it's inexcusable. There are several dozen kids in the hallway below you who wish they had the mental faculties to do homework." I did my Latin homework regularly after he said that. After being caught smoking pot in high school, 1986, my science teacher, "Hi Mr. Fishbine," said to me, "There is a time and place for everything. This is not the time, nor the place." He did not report me to administration. He was a great teacher. Professor Oak said the same thing when I tried to fish in the Pokemon Center. In French class in high school, over 20 years ago, part of the lesson was going over some sentences in French. She pointed one out in particular. I go to school on the bus. My horrible attempt at typing it was something like "Je viens à l'école on bus." I understand I've probably triggered people who speak French. I apologize. I remember vividly the teacher saying, "For some reason, this is the only French any of my students ever remember after they're done with this class." Here I am, 2+ decades removed from that class in the 90s, and that's the only French I remember. Donde está la biblioteca for French? Apparently, the learning English equivalent is the book is on the table. A good mathematician is a lazy mathematician. As the lazier they are, the more time and effort they put into finding the easier solution. Laziness is the driving force behind all innovation. Hard work only makes you tired. Had a history teacher who told me that everything is relative. You can only be poor if someone next to you is rich. You're only stupid if someone next to you is smart. It helps to put things into perspective and realize how superficial a lot of things are in life. That being said, he also randomly told me that wolves are baddest dogs that don't give a crap when we were not talking about wolves or dogs in class, so who knows what was really going on in his head. My AP Euro teacher told us Germany isn't important. This was meant as a to this specific discussion remark, but we all brought it up for the rest of the year, seeing as Germany comes up in just about every unit of AP Euro. I think the point at which he said this was while we were talking about the Renaissance in Italy, and someone mentioned something about Germany. I had a maths teacher who was an older woman, really strict, and nobody particularly liked her. We mocked her way of speaking and were generally mean teenage buttholes. Once, when I was around 15, I hadn't finished my homework, so I dropped my book in a puddle and showed it to her in class to say I'd lost the homework so couldn't hand it in. She questioned me a bit on how it had happened, then asked me to stay after class. The whole lesson I was crapping myself, expecting to be absolutely bollocked once everyone else had gone. So when the bell rang, I sheepishly went up and sat at her desk after everyone had left. To my surprise, she didn't shout at me but gently asked if I was being bullied and somebody had taken my workbook and ruined it on purpose. I was a little skinny kid with glasses and braces, so I can see why she would have thought that, but in that moment I suddenly saw her as a human being with feelings and empathy and not just a teacher. I felt like crap for the way I had treated her, and for lying about what had happened. I never admitted it to her, just reassured her that I was fine, but it did stick with me and I was much less of a dong to teachers after that. Don't bull the bullshitter, Mr. Bird 2005. Also Mr. White. One time one of my elective classes was just kind of chilling out the day before winter break and the teacher decided to arrange all our desks in a circle. He had everyone anonymously write something that was troubling them at the moment and he would go through and give some advice. I wrote about my parents' constant fighting and how I feared their inevitable divorce and the possibility of moving across country with my mother. I wish I could remember what he said, but I vividly remember almost crying because what he said hit so hard, but I kept it together. Less than a month later, both things happened. LMAO. They may forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel. In my senior year we had a dinner at school. There was a very long queue for the desserts, so I went and asked a history teacher where it started, because I couldn't find it. It was pretty chaotic. The teacher proceeded to put an arm around me, walk me to the desserts table, and say, "Ray my boy, frick the queue. RAYMYBOY. What do they call someone who graduated vet school with a 2.0 GPA? Doctor, my first term anatomy professor, in vet school, telling us to stop fretting so much about the grades and worry about the knowledge. Edit. Added clarification about what level of education this advice came from. My anatomy teacher was a cool dude. He'd give us little tidbits of advice before each test, ranging from always put your shopping cart away to you don't have to be 100% okay 100% of the time. And that's 100% okay, 100% of the time. He's definitely one of the best teachers I've had. Being wise is better than being smart. I held on to that right up till receiving my PhD. Now that I'm entrenched in the corporate world of merciless exploitation, I've realized being smart about life is really a subset of being wise. I like this. Also, you always get outsmarted by someone, eventually. If you're not merely surviving, life doesn't have to be a competition or a race. There's no benefit to being right if you can't make people listen to the answer. My science teacher told me something similar. The point of arguing is not to prove that you are right, but to convince the other person that you are right. I had a 9th grade earth science teacher who actually had a PhD in biology. He told us that he had made his was through school by writing things he had to learn on 3x5 note cards, and would pull them out of his pocket when he had a few minutes to memorize the material he had written on them. I used that technique from then on, all the way through my own PhD, when I had something important to understand or commit to memory. In 8th grade, a friend and I used to jokingly sling insults at each other, and one day he retorted that I was a cheap W. Apparently our science teacher overheard and decided to chime in and defend me by shouting, "You're not cheap," in front of the entire class. Apparently someone told the principal and I had to explain that I had no idea what he meant. Nothing had happened. I am absolutely not an 8th grade prostitute, etc. Still have no idea what he meant by it or why he decided to contribute in that way, but it was super awkward and it stuck with me. 1. He was telling you are not a cheap person, you are precious. Or 2. He was telling you that you are not cheap but expensive. 1. Still waters run deep. I was extremely antisocial. Nothing is hard but nothing is easy. My sushi chef. Good, now cook rice for 6 years. I had a chemistry teacher in high school who was a bit of a hothead. One day, when 2 kids were talking in class, he stopped. Everyone expected a quick but firm correction. What we got was so much better. Our teacher stopped and calmly turned towards the class and said, "Do you hear that?" He walked towards the window at the back of the class. Everyone sat stone quiet. He leaned towards the window. "Do you hear it?" Faint laughter. It's 5 million Chinese children laughing quietly because they are taking your jobs. Then he just walked back to the front of the class and started teaching again. No one talked. Dang. I love stories but was slow to pick up reading. Once it clicked, I was at the top of my class until I graduated high school. I have a BA/BCM now. In primary school I wanted to go to a book fair called Voices in the Coast. I was shot down instantly. A year before that, because I was bad at reading, spelling was also hard. My 5th grade teacher made everyone stand up depending on what they got right on a spelling test. I was the only one to get all of them wrong. He made me stand in front of the class. If you ever see this, frick you, Mr. Burns from CSS 2003. Boo earns. Boo earns. I had a homeroom teacher that out of frustration one day ranted about how easy school was. He said, "We literally give you a book or the text, tell you to read it, then ask you to answer questions, the answers to which are found in the book we gave you. It doesn't get any easier than that. Read the dang books, answer the dang questions, that's all school is." I like that last sentence. Whoever threw that paper, your mom's a hoe. Read this in Mr. Feeney's voice. Question everyone and everything. Conduct your own research to find the truth. You can be the smartest person who ever lived and still be wrong. You're the worst guitarist. I was a beginner at that time. Still hate her. You'll never achieve anything. First grade, we were doing a math lesson. The lesson was something about drawing a circle around groups of 5 or 10 things in a picture. Then we had to count the number of things in the picture and raise our hand when we were done. I figured out pretty quickly that counting the things one by one took too much time, so I counted by tens, which were already circled, then counted the leftovers and put up my hand. I was done way before anyone else. The teacher looked at me and said something like, "There is no way you could have counted them all." So I put my hand down and made sure I was not the first one to put my hand up first during that lesson. A few minutes later she complimented another kid who had counted quickly and said that he was probably counting by fives and demonstrated how to do that. I was so angry and thought it was stupid to count by fives when it's easier to count by tens, so why not just do that? The thing is, this woman was usually a pretty good teacher. I don't know if she just didn't like me or was having a rough day or what. But I learned that day that teachers don't know everything and sometimes they're just mean. That's most common with elementary teachers I found. He was the only adult in my life who would tell me I was capable of achieving something, and seemed genuinely proud of me when I got into university, and when I contacted him years later to say I'd got myself a PhD, just like he told me I could. If you want to work at a McDonald's, that's up to you. If you want to work somewhere else, that's also up to you, said to me after I scored crap on a test he knew I could do better at. I work in the space industry now. Thanks, Mr. Teacher. You are a waste of oxygen. Thanks for that. You have an accent. Your skin is brown. Your whole life will be filled with people who will assume this means you are not as smart or as good as they are at literally anything. That's why I push you. That's why I demand more from you. You have to work harder now so you can prove them all wrong for the rest of your life. Ms. Johnson, 9th grade English teacher. This hits home. Scary accurate. You have been visited by the romantic doggo. Comment love is magic so you never fall in the friend zone. Like and subscribe, you magnificent person.